Welcome to episode 411 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourScreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing writer-director Adam Mervis and producer Mark Stolaroff. I had Mark on the podcast before talking about his film DriverX. That was episode 256, so check out that episode when you have a chance if you want to learn more about Mark and his backstory. And Adam is an actor turned writer. He's actually sold some bigger studio projects as a writer, including the upcoming film 21 Bridges starring Chadwick, Boseman, and the upcoming film National Champion starring Timothy Olyphant and J.K. Simmons. But today we're going to be talking about their new micro-budget feature film called The Last Days of Capitalism. It was shot over a week in a suite in a Las Vegas hotel. We talk through the writing of the screenplay, obviously, but we also go into the production as well and how they were able to make this happen. And Mark is very candid about the budget, how much money they spent, and how all of this came together. So really fascinating, in-depth interview. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 411. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I've been working on. The main thing I've been working on over the last week is getting ready for this film festival. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that I want to run my own festival next year. Well, we just locked our location. The festival is going to run from October 7th, 2022 through October 9th next year. Obviously, it's almost a year away. It's about 9-10 months away. We're going to be doing screenings. It's a theater in Hollywood. It's called the Yard Theater. I've rented the theater for 20 hours, so I'm really hoping to screen a lot of films, both features and shorts. So if you are in the Los Angeles area and this sounds like something you might want to do, definitely save the date, October 7th again to October 9th. Hopefully we'll have lots of great films to show. I'm going to be getting everything ready and officially launch the festival in February, and then I'll run this in tandem with the screenplay contest. In fact, I think I'm going to rebrand this as SYS's six-figure film festival and screenplay contest. The emphasis on the film festival side will be films that were produced for less than $1 million. And then on the screenplay side, they will be screenplays that could be produced for less than $1 million. So that's kind of going to be the angle that I take. And as I said, this is going to be the first year. And if it goes well, hopefully I'll do it a second and third year and kind of build this up into something that really can celebrate independent film. Anyway, if you have a finished film or if you have an indie producer friend, please do pass word along. As I said, I'm just really looking to screen movies and you'll find the best indie films that are out there over this, the next 12-month period. Anyway, that's the main thing I've been putting together over the last week. Now let's get into the main segment. Today, I am interviewing writer-director Adam Mervis and producer Mark Stolaroff. Here is the interview. Welcome, Mark and Adam, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, you were on the show before. It's episode number 256. So I'm going to refer people listening to this. Check out that episode. We went into some of your background, kind of how you got into the business and worked your way up as a producer. So maybe now today we can just talk to Adam just for a second here, kind of get his backstory, his origin story. What is your story, Adam? Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I grew up in Miami and I went to Florida State, and Florida State famously has a very good film school.
And a terrible football team.
And a terrible football
but
team.
But not worse than the University of Texas football team.
Yeah. I took an acting class kind of to run out the clock on my senior year and kind of got bit by the acting bug and then started acting in some of the FSU film school senior theses and stuff. And I met my good friend and producer of the film we're going to talk about, Last Days of Capitalism, Kenny Harrison, when I acted in one of his films. A bunch of heavy hitters were there. Joy McMillan, who edits all Barry Jenkins films. Barry Jenkins was there making films, and just a bunch of other people. And I kind of decided to make a U-turn and go be an actor. And so I went with about $2,000 in my pocket to New York City, like they say, in 2003, and started doing acting. Started acting in theater, and really kind of got in the scene there. And like all actors at a certain point, I think you're in a tiny play in a church basement in the East Village, and you go, I could write something better than this thing I'm in. And that's what I started to do, primarily just to be able to act and control my acting and not have to wait and audition and all that rigmarole. And then the second play I wrote, which was a play called The Revolutionaries, got a good review. And I had been coming in and out of Los Angeles enough that I knew a couple guys in the CAA mailroom. And they said, hey, this play got a good review. We could probably help you. Do you want to write a screenplay? And I said, sure. And I can't remember exactly the sequence, but I had the Philly Kid around, and I gave them the Philly Kid, and they said, hey, I think we can like help you make this or help you sell this. And that was kind of the beginning of me becoming a screenwriter. And then after the Philly Kid, I kind of decided to really become, bore down into writing and still act, but not try to, shoehorn my acting and my writing together. And that was probably a good decision now. That was a decision that took about 6 years to come to fruition. And we can go back if you want, but I'll flash ahead. About 6 years, I was sleeping on my buddy Abe Schwartz's couch, and I sold 21 pages, which kind of really kickstarted me into, I guess, what you would call a Hollywood screenwriting career.
Gotcha. Now, just talk about that transition. So after the Philly Kid sold and was produced, these are guys at CAA. Did CAA sign you? Like, then did you have a big agent at CAA? And did that help you get this 21 Bridges deal?
No. Some of the guys at CAA I knew were very, very young, and they kind of hip pocketed me as they were. Some of them were young agents, junior agents, and some of them were still on somebody's desk. Two guys actually, and one I will name, Matt Rosen. He's still a good friend of mine, and now runs my management company with Jeff Silver, my other manager. And they couldn't really bring me into CAA. The Philly Kid was a tiny deal that was made almost against my will. I mean, I think if we backtrack a little bit, my New York theater roots kind of give me a certain arrogance and stubbornness in Hollywood that perhaps could be called self-sabotage at times. But I didn't really want to, I saw what the Philly Kid was becoming, which is like, let's say something along the lines of schlock. There's a lot of people worked really hard on that film. The finance and money guys were not some of them. After the Philly Kid happened, basically they gave me, I think $30,000 and said, thank you very much. And I didn't really have an agent. I was able to kind of sign with a smaller agency, APA, and kind of start to build from there. But there was no one was like, oh, the Philly Kid, let's get him in there,
Mm-hmm. So then how did you eventually get to the point where you sold 21 Bridges? What were those steps from the Philly Kid to 21 Bridges?
Let me see. I've already feel like I've gotten myself in trouble here, but let's see if we can do this without getting in trouble.
And just roughly speaking, I mean, was it, so you sound like you had an agent at APA. Did the agents at APA, did you write 21 Bridges as a spec and then APA took it out, got it sold? Did you send it to more of your contacts? Just sort of the gist. Screenwriters are always asking, how did this script actually go from script to produced script?
Yeah. I'll do the whole thing. I was at APA. Nothing was happening. I was kind of coming up with ideas, writing features, and nothing really happened. But when the Philly Kid came out, my manager, who's still my manager at the time, was able to get me a meeting at WME. WME then signed me, and I thought, here we go. Like, I'm at WME. I had a meeting with like 7 guys, you know, like they put together a whole team around you and you go. And I wrote a script that was pretty hot. It was one of those scripts where everyone reads and goes, we love this script. No way we're making it, but we love it, you know? One of those. And
Last Days of Capitalism.
Yeah. And then nothing happened. And then I kind of like crying in my manager's office, you know, waiting tables in LA. And I said, what do I do? He said, you better come up with a new idea. Come up with an idea for a TV show. A producer comes on board, a big producer, a big director comes on board. We then spend about 2 years pitching the show around town. Nothing happens. I was now then completely flat broke. And I say, I'm going back to New York to do theater. And at least I'll be happy in bartending and doing theater there. The bar I had closed randomly one night. So I was able to collect unemployment. And I sat for a summer and wrote 21 Bridges in the summer, collecting unemployment. I had then fired WME because nothing was happening. I went to Paradigm. I walked into my first meeting at Paradigm, said, hey guys, I got this script called 21 Bridges. Let's try to sell it. And within the course of about 2 or 3 months, it sold to SYS and the Russo brothers, and away we went. So I know there's a thing in screenwriting, and I would do it too, especially when I was starting out and things weren't going well. Like, the agent is going to fix all your problems. Like, if I just could have an agent at WME, then I would be great. Then like my career would take off. That was like the furthest from my experience. I had to keep writing, I had to keep creating stuff, and I keep kind of running through different walls and obstacles. And many times the agents were the obstacle, in that a big place like that is so busy, is so profit centric, that if it doesn't work quickly, they're kind of moving on. And so I think for any young or up and coming screenwriters, I would be very careful to assign, if I get an agent, it's going to help me a lot.
Gotcha. So Mark, let's talk to you for a minute. How did you get into Adam's orbit, and how did you guys meet? And then what ultimately brought you into The Last Days of Capitalism?
So as you know, I've been, in this world of micro budget filmmaking for too long. Pretty much after I left, or after Next Wave Films closed in 2002, I started becoming an independent producer, making specifically no budget films. And then in 2005, I started No Budget Film School and started teaching no budget filmmaking. That's really the only kind of filmmaking I knew. And when I was an executive at Next Wave Films, that's the kind of films that we were getting involved with, and like Chris Nolan's film and stuff like that. So I've been doing this for a long time, and made several features with Henry Burial. I just come off of DriverX, which is, I guess, what last time we talking about how we made that film, which was a $130,000 film. It was a film that should have been maybe, I don't know, $500,000 film that we made for very little, but it was more money than like what I would teach in my class, because I teach something more like how to make a film for $5,000 or whatever. And so we have a mutual friend, Adam and I, my old college roommate, also a very successful filmmaker and editor named Tom Provost. And I guess Adam, had mentioned to him, I'm putting together, I'm getting $40,000. I'm going to make a movie, and it's going to be a very more designed to be a micro budget film than the kind of films that Henry and I do, 2 characters, 1 location kind of a movie. And he had Kenny, who he mentioned, who was producing it, who was at the time we were calling, him the line producer, which on a little movie like this is kind of it's an overstatement to call anybody a line producer on a movie that is this small. But he was, he was involved already. And Tom said, "Oh, well, you should talk to," and I think we'd probably met before at a party or something, because I know Abe well. And in fact, I was supposed to produce Abe made a film that Adam was in called Engaged in Vegas, which came out in May, which is a really great micro budget film that I've done a presentation on. And I was supposed to produce that movie, but I couldn't. There was a conflict in calendar. And anyway, so we met to talk about, this film that Adam wanted to make. And he told, I had already decided I wasn't going to produce any more movies after DriverX. It was just like, it was such a difficult, the whole experience was so hard. I mean, I was like, I think I'm done micro budget films. And then Adam, met him at the 101 coffee shop, which is sadly no longer there. And, I really enjoyed just hanging out with Adam and hearing his story. And we talked a lot about 21 Bridges, which hadn't come out yet, but it was coming out in November. This was like in June or July or something. And then he told me about the project. And I'm like, the first thing I thought was, I hadn't read the script, but I thought this is the kind of project, just the elements of the not the creative part of it, but the production parts of it, that I would really enjoy doing. And I thought I could be helpful because of what they were looking for at the time. And Kenny's background is more production oriented and not necessarily all the other things that kind of go along with it. Like, I could look at that budget and go, well, there's no money for this, and you're gonna, you can make a movie for $40,000, but you're gonna need some money here. And so, I felt like I could give that perspective. Mm-hmm. And then I read the script and I really liked the script. And for me, it was like, this is kind of an easy project for me, because it's much more of a micro budget film. And I don't have to do all the work. I don't have to raise the money or put my own money in. I don't have to I'm not the only producer, and they had put together a lot of the things that we ended up doing. Like, they were already like scouting locations. I think at that point, I know that I didn't have a big say in how we were going to, that we were actually going to go to Vegas and shoot it, which is what we did. I mean, because there's other options. We could have said, oh, let's cheat Vegas. We'll shoot it in LA. And they had already made that decision. Like, that's the way we want to do it. And I thought that was a good way to do it. I mean, there's a million ways to make a movie, but anyway, so that's how I got involved. And then, it was this really fast experience too, because every film I've done with Henry takes years. And we shot this in September in 10 days, and we were finished. We went to our first festival in March of the following year. So it was just a few months. And if it wasn't for COVID, the whole experience would have been faster in terms of getting it out into the world. But COVID really kind of put the kibosh on that. So, but anyway, that's how I got involved in the whole process.
Sure. Can I go back and touch on a couple things you said, and Adam can close his ears for this little bit, but you mentioned you met him. What was it you liked about him? And we can talk about the script second, but what was it like you liked about him personally? And I ask this question because I think writers so often miss the fact that chemistry between two people, a writer and a producer, is so important. It's not always just purely about the writing. Sometimes there is that chemistry, but what are those things you're looking for in a writer? And what are those things that you saw in Adam that made you say, okay, I'm going to devote my time? Because it's exactly what you're saying. A movie like this, you're not going to make tons of money most likely off of this thing. So it is more about, you got to get in business with people that you want to be in business with, that you're going to enjoy spending time with. So just talk about that a little bit. What were the things that Adam did that impressed you?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know if I remember, everything about that particular lunch. I mean, and I'll just back up and say, I wasn't, Kenny and I weren't getting paid on this. I mean, this is a completely free job for us. We paid the cast and the crew, but Adam and I and Kenny, not getting paid, and knowing that going in. I mean, on a $40,000 movie, producer and director, writers not getting paid, and so it really is a labor of love. You have to enjoy the people you're working with. I'd met Kenny before, I think. I can't remember if I'd met. I think I had met Kenny before, but Kenny also really nice guy, great guy to work with. Which I learned, after meeting with Adam. But I mean, I guess shut his ears, whatever. I just enjoy hanging out with Adam. I mean, he's funny. I mean, we relate to each other on certain like sports and this and that, and just a certain kind of sense of humor that we both have that, like, I don't have to explain, or he doesn't explain to me. Mm-hmm. Some of that kind of stuff goes a long way. just, I mean, there's a kind of like, slanted kind of sense of humor or whatever that we just, we just connect with immediately. And I think I could tell, we talked a lot about 21 Bridges, and I could tell that this is somebody that kind of, had an interesting career and had some talent, obviously. Even before I'd read the script, he clearly, he'd sold a big script to a big company and was, coming out in a big movie and all this kind of stuff. And yet, I hadn't seen 21 Bridges yet, but, that experience, and he can speak to that if he wants, or y'all want to talk about it. It wasn't a perfect experience, and which is typical on a big movie for a screenwriter, especially. And so there was some thought to Adam had a real passion for what he wanted to do with this film that, wasn't what happens on a studio film. And I think he must have said the right things to me in terms of what you kind of need to hear from someone who wants to get into this kind of thing, because it's a very difficult, making a micro budget film, you really have to do it for the right reasons. And I heard those reasons. And again, there was a place for me too. I felt like I didn't need to barrel my way in. It was like, oh, I think I could really be helpful here. And to be honest, this is going to sound, I don't crass or whatever, but it's like this, this is somebody who's going somewhere, hopefully. And it sounded like that. And it would be fun to get involved in a project with someone whose career might be going somewhere, interesting. Not that I'm going to be dragged along with that, but just, it's more fun to work with somebody, I would say, in that situation than it is with somebody you talk to and you're like, this person, we're going to make a terrible film. This person's never going anywhere with their career or whatever. I mean, obviously you're not going to want to get involved in a project that you don't think has some potential. And I wouldn't say potential to make a lot of money, potential to get out in a big way. I mean, it's clear without even reading the script that this is a small movie. It's not going to get out in a big way, in the way that small movies, generally don't get out in a big way. But we could hopefully get it seen, and it give Adam what he wanted out of it. And it would give me something what I wanted at that time, which was, I didn't really want to stop producing. But I didn't want to take on a project because I'm getting older, and I can't take on projects that take 6 years to get done. I'm going to be, I've already got too much gray hair for that. And so this was going to be something that we could, it was going to be easy for me. And yet I'm not just I'm not, I'm doing the work, but I'm not killing myself. So there were a lot of elements there that worked for me.
Gotcha. And so maybe, yeah. So maybe then you can talk about the script. Then once you read the script, maybe you can give us some pointers. Like, what are the things that you really liked in the script that really just said, okay, we can do this cheaply, and you want to get involved?
Right. I mean, it's smart. I mean, the reviews we've gotten, we're 13 out of 13, 100% Rotten Tomatoes right now, and I've been pulling quotes out of those reviews, and 4 or 5 of them use the word intelligent, and that's that comes across. It's a smartly written script. You've got 2 fully fledged characters, and that you can see good actors will want to do these roles. We didn't have a lot of money to get good actors, and we weren't looking for name actors or anything like that. Just that was never really on the table. We never talked about doing that. But we had to find good actors. There's no way to make this movie without really spending some time casting. That was one of the things I think that I don't remember. My memory, and Adam may disagree, was that we need to get a casting director and make sure we get, and at the time Adam was going to play the lead role. And I was like, we need to find a really great actress, because there's just can't make this movie without that. I don't think we can find that person without a casting director. I mean, I've done a lot of my own casting, but I've been using casting directors the last, 2 or 3 projects with Henry, and it made a huge difference. And so we went to the casting director that I had used on DriverX. And she was great. And then we started thinking, well, we're going to read, I'm kind of getting off the script here, but we're going to read for a female. Let's, because Adam was on the fence about whether he wanted to take on that much. And I was happy with him doing the acting, but I could support either way. I wasn't telling him he needed to not act. But I said, why don't we go ahead and read some guys as well, and just in case you think it's too much. And so we started reading both parts, and we actually, just again to stay on this tangent, the female actress that we cast for the female part, for the woman, non-SAG, kind of came out of nowhere, which is, and it was a total discovery, which is great, which is something you really, is so fun to do on a film like this. And then the guy, veteran actor, was on a TV show. We were lucky that he read for us, and we were lucky to get him kind of an actor, not a name necessarily, although to some people they're going to know him, but very much a very seasoned actor. But both of them, we did chemistry reads, both of them terrific. And Adam was actually terrific when he read it with the same actress that we ended up casting. But it was Adam's decision. I think I'd rather, not do all of it. And I think it was probably the best decision, even though I think it would be really fun to see Adam play that part, because he played it very differently than Mike. But anyway, so now I forgot the original question.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think that answers. Yeah, what was good about the script? So let's dig into the last days of capitalism, and maybe Adam, you can just to give us a quick pitch or log line to start. What is this film all about?
Sure. This film is about. It opens on what you believe is a love affair happening in the Las Vegas penthouse over the course of a weekend. You think, and then as the opening scene unfolds, you begin to think, maybe this woman is actually a high-end escort, and perhaps this guy has a lot of money up here, and that's what's going on. And then as the movie unfolds a little more, you begin to ask yourself, maybe she's a con man, or maybe something else is going on up here, and maybe he doesn't have that much money, or maybe he has a lot of money, I think you begin to ask yourself what's going on, who's who, what's what, and it's really a film about, I think, loneliness, love, and economic systems. No, it actually has nothing to do with economic systems. But yeah, it's a two-hander, kind of in the vein of Medicine for Melancholy or the Before Midnight series, kind of those, or Sex, Lies, and Videotape, kind of those old school indies that we all grew up on. And
so where did this idea come from? What was the genesis of this story?
I had written a off-Broadway play by the same title.
Okay.
And I think the genesis for the original, I can tell you, I was at a bachelor party in Las Vegas and met someone, and we were having this wonderful conversation, and kind of like all that stuff you love about meeting someone for the first time. And my brother's good friend leans over to me in the middle of the conversation and tells me that she's a prostitute. And I go, everything completely changed, because she was a prostitute. And there was a real sadness to the exchange then, which quickly ended. But I remember that encounter really well. And I went back to New York, and I kind of wanted to write about those two people in the club, who had met in the bar. And that's kind of where I went from.
Gotcha. So just quickly, Adam, let's talk about your writing process a little bit. Where do you write, and when do you typically write? Do you need to get out to Starbucks, that ambient noise? Do you have a home office that you write in? Are you a morning writer? You write in the middle of the night? What does your writing schedule typically look like?
Yeah, I think what I like most about writing and different projects is each project is different, and each project requires me to solve a new problem I've never solved before. And that includes my process. I think I'll say, I don't remember exactly Capitalism, but I know right now I'm very much a morning writer. I'm very much a get up, do some kind of breakfast, do some kind of meditation, and go write. And it's usually getting out to write. I usually try to get out. I have a co-working space that I'll go to sometimes, but I really like a coffee shop. Especially in New York, LA, the coffee shop scene in LA can get a little too screenwritery, where it's like guys like piling screenplays on, on their desk, and or on their table. in some kind of competition, and it gets a little distracting for me. But I'll try to write from about 10 o'clock, and I'll start in a coffee shop. I'll come if it's really going well. I'll come back to my place, keep writing, and I'll write till about lunch. I eat lunch at about 2, and at about 2, if I can get 4 hours in pretty solid, I feel good about it, and I'll kind of move after lunch at about 3 to emails, all sorts of different stuff that I've put off distracting myself with.
Yeah, exactly. How much time do you spend in like the outlining stage, just doing index cards, outlining, and then how much time do you spend in final draft, actually cranking out script pages?
For something like this, for my plays, I don't outline. I don't know any playwright that outlines a play. You kind of go in and live with it and figure it out. For the bigger studio projects I do, obviously they want an outline, and I try to make that outline as bare bones as possible. In that, for me, because my background as an actor, the process for me is much more based in the final draft document. It's almost like a rehearsal for me, where I'll start talking and we'll do it, and then we'll come back and we'll do it again, and you kind of keep going with that, So I spend very little time outlining, although for a feature film, I do like to have kind of a bare bones outline just so I don't get completely lost. Or those days, there are those days you're just sitting there on a Wednesday in Los Angeles in like a smoke-filled sky where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go be an accountant or something. And then at least you can look at your outline and go like, okay, it says he walks into a bar, and I'll write that. And you can at least write something for the day. I think getting in the final draft for me now, my process as I've gotten, I guess, more seasoned, I love having the printed first draft. I'll print it out and I'll start going to work in pen on it all over the place. That's when it really starts to cook for me. It's me getting to that place and getting, this is not an original thought, but confronting all those blank pages you've got to get to 120. And even if I've got dog shit, 120 pages of dog shit, now I feel like I can make it work. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your development process a little bit. And I wonder if, Mark, you could step in here. When you got the script, did it need any further development? And Adam, did you get notes from Mark, or at this point was the script just, you had developed it for a long enough period of time, you felt pretty confident with it?
Well, I'll let Mark say what he felt about the beginning of the script. I think for me, when me and Mark met at Cafe 101, I had a part of that conversation was coming off 21 Bridges. I like to say on 21 Bridges, I got the full Hollywood. And screenwriters will know what I mean. And if you look at the credits of 21 Bridges, you will understand what I mean as well. But I said to Mark, look, I want to get back to my roots of, I think what I talked about in the beginning of this conversation of New York theater, of writing something and doing it on stage, and kind of, that indie ethos of like, let's go make a play or make a film and let's go do it and fuck the man. I said, here's the script. It's bold and ambitious. I want to make it as good as possible, but I want to shoot this script. And we did I think 2 or 3 table reads where we really started to kind of tweak in on the characters and stuff like that.
Before I was involved, just so you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you remember, Mark? I don't remember a lot of notes. And, in the edit, we started kind of playing around, but I don't remember a lot of notes in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, by the time I'd gotten it, it was developed, fully developed script. It wasn't like, he was trying to figure it out. And that's unusual, I guess. I mean, when I work with Henry, I'll get like a sentence. Here's the next film I think I want to do. Here's the first sentence, treatment, then a treatment, and then I'll give notes, and depending on the thing with like Pig and with like DriverX, I was more involved in like developing, not that I'm a writer and I'm not trying to write, but Henry likes to get the feedback, and I would get versions and I would give him notes or whatever. But this was way further along. I don't remember having any notes about, creative notes about it. I maybe there was something, but I don't remember that. It was pretty far along. I mean, I probably had notes about how we would do it as a production, not creatively. So, and it didn't change that much when we edited it too. Obviously there are changes and there's things that get pulled, and but there wasn't a ton, there were a few things, but not a ton of that either.
Gotcha. So let's talk about that. Then the next step. So you guys had a script that you liked. It sounds like, Adam, you guys raised $40,000. Number one, how did you raise the $40,000, and how did you decide that you could actually do this for $40,000? Did your producer come up with a budget? Where was that number? Where did that number come from? And then ultimately, how did you raise that money?
I met with Mark. Well, part of what appealed to me about this process, about this project, was that I knew I could do it. I knew in some way, shape, or form I could do it. And honestly, I called my two brothers and I said, can I have some money? And they sent some money. And that was it. As far as the money, I met, as far as arriving on that number, I met with Mark, and I think that's when I kind of sought out Mark to say, like, can we actually do this? And what's the actual number? I think if we're talking like a practical, I think our cash flow was actually 30,000. The other 10 comes in, honestly, from me just in post production, kind of pushing it over. But
and I think I probably put in like 3,000 or 4,000 myself here and there.
Yeah. So then
not just paying for things and not getting reimbursed or something like that.
Talk about that off air, but yeah.
That's the least amount I've ever done that on a movie I've done. So just
but the like, I met with Mark and I said, what's the like actual cash amount we need to have to put this movie in the can? And I'm a big believer, in like, set a date, we're going, everything will appear, get it in the can and figure it out. Now that'll get you in trouble. And that'll get you a lot of credit card debt in your early 20s sometimes too. Mm-hmm. I was in a financially healthy enough position with my screenwriting career to be able to say, let's get it in the can. And I think I can land this plane. Yeah.
And my recommendation, I remember early, because it's always my recommendation was, well, we always have crowdfunding. If we want to do Kickstarter, I've done 3 Kickstarter campaigns in my past, and Adam was not interested in that, but I thought that was something we could also lean on. I mean, I can't remember now. I have to kind of go back because I'm curious now, because I remember, I marked up this budget that they had created. He and Kenny had created a pretty simple kind of a budget. It wasn't in any kind of budget format or anything like that. And you didn't really need that for this kind of a movie. And they had already decided how they wanted to like pay people. It was like a really, most favored nations, like everybody's going to get paid the same amount, actors and crew, and very simple kind of, payment kind of thoughts. And I was like, okay, we can do it like that. And so the money was like, it was pretty simple. It's like, we're going to pay the cast and crew, very small. It was a 5 or 6 man crew. They were getting paid, was 4 or 5 people getting paid on the crew, because Adam and I and Kenny were not getting paid. We were also part of that crew. And then, locations, very little in gear. I mean, it's a pretty simple budget. And then it was like, okay, well, we're missing this. And I just don't remember all those things. I know casting director was one of those things that I don't remember. I think you guys didn't think you needed a casting director. And then we kind of talked them into it, and we ended up, putting some money into a casting director, which is not easy to get someone who's a real casting director for not a lot of money. Even though, we're only at the time looking to cast one part, but we looked at a lot of people. It was a lot of work. It was not an easy, easy casting. This took weeks or whatever. And so, and then the big thing was post. There was like no money for post. And when we kind of finished it, I think there was really no money for post. And for me, like, I have my personal kind of thing where it's like, I like to spend $15,000 on sound, like all the sound for, post sound. And there was never going to be that. So it was going to be like, well, how can we do this, really shortcut this and still end up with something that works post wise? That was the biggest challenge. And we were able to pull that off. I mean, we spent very little on post. It was like the least I've ever spent on post sound. And we got a really amazing favor from a big time sound person I'd worked with before, who just, I wouldn't even ask him to work on the film, and he totally did it. And then it was Craigslist a little bit on some of this, and then there's someone else that I knew who did the color really inexpensively, because I usually go to a facility that I like to do that, and so and I worked with a composer I'd worked with before, Alexander Burke, who was great and brought in some really talented people on the music side, because we had so little money on the music side. For like songs and for the score, so that part was a challenge. But the production budget and going in and shooting it, I mean, there were things along the way. We had a DP who we went to Vegas, drove to Vegas with him, who to scout the location, because we'd found this place that we wanted to shoot, and he had amazing gear. He had this like amazing camera. He had a mirror and some other stuff, and then he had to drop out like at the last minute, which was like we're gonna shoot in like a week or 2 weeks, and we ended up finding a replacement cinematographer, Bethany, who was terrific, but we were getting all this free gear, and that was part of the making that budget work, and he was generous enough to let us still use the gear, which was like a huge thing, and we still rented a few pieces, but it was like those kind of like lucky, which you just always have. You can't make a film like this without things going wrong and things going well, and those kind of lucky breaks and unlucky catastrophes kind of mixed together. So
I think for anyone listening, the idea that you write something and go make it is also the most freeing thing. And you can get yourself in trouble thinking too far down the line of like, well, what about our post sound? How are we going to figure that out? Don't ignore it, but make the movie. And like Mark said, like you figure it out, someone does you a favor, or you go on Craigslist, or an advantage of being in Los Angeles is you can call 5 friends and be like, hey, can someone help me here? And it'll happen. It may not happen the way you want it to happen. It might be slightly painful for you or whatever, but you should, I think one of the things going back that I liked about Mark when I met with him is he was very much of the ethos of let's make the thing. Like, let's make it, and let's not let anyone stop us. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of faith, but there's a couple things. I mean, there's the kind of no budget rule that you've always heard is fast, cheap, good, pick 2. So you apply that rule, and usually you want it to be good and you want it to be cheap. So it's going to be slow. So when you're like going to try to figure these things out, like this always happens with DriverX. It was like on DriverX, it was how we don't have any money for locations, and these locations are all thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's like, well, we're not going to spend that money on those locations. We're going to take the time and find the locations, which sometimes can take months. And so that's really one of the first issues. You just know it could take longer. It didn't actually take that long, luckily. And then the other thing that I've learned is that, it's, what Adam said, but just kind of another way to say it is like, if you're committed to something, 100% committed to something, you have to believe that when you put, there's no floor, you have to believe that when you're as you're stepping, that the floor will present itself before your foot hits the ground. And if you've done that enough, you just know I'm so committed, I will find a way to walk this from here to here, even though there's nothing there. I'm committed, and I know I'll do it, and I'll do it, and it'll be a different way each time or whatever, but it'll happen. And I've done it enough in different experiences in my life, but also with filmmaking to just believe that because I'm so committed, I will find a way. And Adam was completely like that. And it was fun to be with 2 or 3 people that are like, that's just the thinking, there's no one there going, what are we going to do? It's like, oh, we'll figure out a way. I mean, I don't know if we want to say this, but the biggest one of those was, are we going to be able to really shoot in this room, in this place in Vegas? Because we're not telling them we're shooting a feature film up there. And we drove up to Vegas.
I was shooting a 21 Bridges interview.
We drove up to Vegas with a Suburban full of gear, and that was our backstory. Because the movie was coming out in a couple of months, and we're here in Vegas, and we're going to shoot this interview with this screenwriter of this big movie that's coming out. But we never had to tell that story. But we parked this Suburban filled with like clearly film gear, like big pieces of, like a combo stand and C-stands and flags and whatever. And we're just walking past the security and getting on this elevator over a series of days, like carrying this stuff up because we didn't need all of it. And so we left some of it in the car. We only pull it up and no one said a word. And we're like, they could easily just say, where are you going? You can't do any of this. And then we brought everybody to Vegas and cast the movie and all this, and we wouldn't have been able to shoot a movie, but we were like, we can do this. And we'd scouted it and we kind of like looked at the situation and, like we'll pull this off and we'll say this, if this happens, we'll say this, so there was a little bit of a plan, but it was also like a ton of faith that this was going to work out, that we're going to be able to drag all our stuff up there. And
it was like Ocean's 11.
Sorry?
It was like
Ocean's. Yeah, exactly. Ocean's 11. It was total Vegas situation. But so, those are just things that, I think some people are okay with that. And some people are just like, that we can't make a movie that way. And I've always made movies that way. And I've always had like a backup plan, and I've had to use the backup plans. I've gotten shut down many times, and, in the back of your head, you're like, if we get shut down, we'll do this, kind of thing. And so, those are things that's kind of fun. I like to make movies that way. I prefer to make movies that way. Actually, it's just fun to me. So.
Yeah. How many days did it take you guys to shoot? And is 100% of the film in this penthouse suite? There's no extra sets or no other locations. And then also, what does a crew look like? Like, what are the actual crew positions you have? You got a cinematographer, a first AC, a grip, gaffer. Like, what are the actual positions you have?
It was 10 shooting days. There were a couple of half days in there, and then 8 full days. But just the kind of way we got there. We had a cinematographer, a first AC, who was both of them very, very young. I mean, the first AC was like young. And the cinematographer just graduated from AFI. She was younger than I just found out like a couple of weeks ago how old she really was. I'm like older than her dad, which is depressing, but whatever. Very talented though. First AC, very good. That was someone that she'd worked with. We wanted a female crew. We were looking kind of for a female crew because of the kind of sensitive sexual nature of the movie. And it's not an HBO thing where we're paying everybody a lot of money to take their clothes off. And there's a little bit of that, less than the script probably looked like there was going to be, but we were looking to kind of not have a bunch of guys on the crew. And so female cinematographer, female first AC, female gaffer, who also had worked with the cinematographer. And so the gaffer she was the whole grip and electric department, essentially. We had a person I'd worked with before a couple times, who was the stylist, who did makeup and wardrobe. And then we had a person doing sound. And then Kenny was essentially like the first AC. I mean, the first AD, and also, did the slate and whatever needed to be done. And then I was someone who could go and deal with stuff. So I was a production accountant. I was the DIT. I was dealing with props. I did all the meals. I brought all the meals up, which was the worst. I mean, this is like, they're making a movie and I'm like, you can't tell me, this is so hard to do. And I've done this before. They're a very difficult group, like to keep happy with the meals and stuff. And it was like, I hated that job. But anyway, and that was the crew. And then,
perfect. Yeah. And you said it took 10 days. So you rented this suite for 10 days. What was your,
anything else? There was one piece of the script that was outside, that was written to be outside the thing, which we kind of shot. And it didn't, it was kind of before they meet kind of thing. And, we didn't really like the footage. And then when we were editing it together, we realized we didn't really need it. So everything was shot at that moment. We didn't do any pickups, which we could always have done. But we didn't need to do anything like that. So everything that's in the movie now was shot in Vegas in that 10 days.
Gotcha. So that's a great story. Very inspiring. I hope screenwriters really listen to this and what you're saying here. I just like to end the interviews for and get the guests. Is there anything you've seen recently that you thought was really great? Maybe something a little under the radar, HBO, Hulu, Netflix. Is there anything out recently that you guys have watched that you really like that you'd like to recommend?
Oh, no, that's on the spot. What am I watching? I'm watching Succession. Wow, that's not under the radar for sure. Okay. I haven't seen. Me and Mark were just talking about. I haven't seen that like fall slate of movies yet, where I'm really jazzed about it. So I will I to Mark. I've bought enough time for you. Do you have anything?
I can mention a couple of things. I mean, I am seeing a lot of the fall slate. once I was able to go back to theaters, I signed up for this AMC, all you can watch. I mean, watch like 3 free movies, because I like to try to go see a movie like once or twice a week. And so I've been seeing the kind of big movies, and I won't comment on those. I don't like to say bad things about movies, but I will say I saw the first movie I saw coming back from the whole COVID shutdown in a theater was a $60,000. They shot it for $30,000, and the whole budget was like $60,000. No budget film called The Killing of Two Lovers. And I actually did I did an interview, similar to this, but it was like 2 hours with that director like a couple of months ago for the No Budget Film School thing that I do. And the more I think about that movie, the more, I had to watch it a few times to prepare for my presentation. It's just a great movie. It's a great, similarly done, like small, crew. They shot in this tiny town in Utah, but it's just it's kind of like a great art film, and also still quote commercial. I mean, it's not commercial to most people, but it's not like just arty and you can't enjoy it or whatever. It's just really well done. And I know a lot of people missed it. It played theatrically. Neon, it was in Sundance, and then Neon picked it up, but no one was going to theaters when it came out. And most people, when I mention that movie, they've never heard of it. And it's like, wow, because it's really good. And so that's the one.
What's the name of it again?
The Killing of Two Lovers.
Killing of Two Lovers. Perfect. Yeah, that's a great recommendation for our audience. How can people see The Last Days of Capitalism? What's the release schedule going to be like for that?
We're on Amazon right now, and we're on Google Play. In TVOD on transactional, so you can rent it for like $3 and you can buy it for $9.99 or whatever. And then it'll roll out in a broader way. It'll eventually be on, I guess on SVOD and AVOD and stuff. But right now I think it's just playing in those, 2 places, and then it'll eventually be on other platforms and stuff. So that's how they Indie Rights is releasing it, and that's how they like to do that. So.
Perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you guys are doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing. Just tell me that now, and I'll round all that up for the show notes.
For me, it's my name, Adam Mervis, on Instagram is the best for me. And we also have our Last Days of Capitalism Instagram page as well, and website.
Yeah, we're not as good at social media as we should be. I'm terrible at it. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, Stolaroff. My website's Mark Stolaroff. And from there, if you're interested in No Budget Film School, if you wanted to subscribe to my No Budget Film School list and be part of all the things I'm doing with that's you can find that pretty easily at markstolaroff.com or nobudgetfilmschool.com.
Perfect. Adam, Mark, I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking with me today. Congratulations on getting this film finished, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future about your future projects.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really been fun.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right, take care.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director Trevor Hawkins, who just did a really cool indie drama called Lotawana. I was researching what I might be able to do with cryptocurrencies and these NFTs for the rideshare killer, and I kept running into articles about his film. He actually minted some NFTs for his film, and he's one of the first films to really try this. It wasn't really a big success, but he did get some decent press out of it, which is actually how I found him. I just kept running into these interviews that he was doing. But he's very candid, really nice guy, really artistic, creative guy, and really an artist. And very, very, very honest about how this all went. As I said, it wasn't really a success as far as minting these things and making money on them. But I think that there were some aspects to it that were successful. And we really dig into this, the whole crypto NFT wave and how that might affect television and film in the future. And I think I'm going to be doing more of this. It's something that I'm kind of becoming more and more interested in, just cryptocurrencies in general, and then how that can ultimately relate to films and especially independent film. I think the NFTs is definitely one angle that independent films will be using in the future. So I'll be getting more into this and sort of discussing this and hopefully bringing on some more guests. But we have Trevor next week. And as I said, his film is one of the first to really try and utilize NFTs as a way of financing the film and getting some recoupment on the investment. Anyways, keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's our show. Thank you for listening.